your learning agenda is kind of like a framework that helps to put all of the different parts of the responsive feedback process in order. And so you can almost think of this as a funnel. Like, we're going to start broadly in this step. And the first step in our learning agenda is to identify these assumptions. And as we go through each step, we're going to get more and more specific. And this worksheet reflects each one of those steps. And so we're going to kind of take it in sections to fill out this worksheet. And by the time we walk through the rest of the curve process, you'll have filled out the whole thing. So it's not something that you need to fill out ahead of time. We'll kind of walk through it together. And so you can see at the top, and if you haven't done so already, the top of this learning agenda document, it asks you a few broad questions about your program. So it wants to know the overarching goal of your program and of the implementation of your program. And that's kind of like a guiding principle of making sure that what we're doing is aligned to those program goals. And then next, those key program outcomes. Because remember, when we talked about identifying these assumptions, one of our main questions is we want to make sure that the activities that we list are reaching these outcomes. And if not, what are those challenges that are keeping those activities from reaching those outcomes? And that example, like I gave, if you have a training, but people don't understand the content, it's not going to increase their knowledge or behaviors. So we have to make sure those assumptions are met so those outcomes are actually received. So having your outcomes listed can help kind of bring you back to focus as you start prioritizing things throughout this course. And then you see those key activities. And this is really going to be our starting point, because as you'll see below, this is when we start to break down those activities and really start to examine them. So here in this box, you would list those key activities of your program, the trainings, the different intervention components, all the different, the key steps within your program that are your areas of focus. And so then as we reach the table, what we're going to try to do as an exercise is to work through and break down your activities in a similar way to what I had described before. So you'll have your activity as a whole, and you can put that on top. But then in the first column, what are those actual steps? And if you can put them in order, that would be helpful. First, to complete this activity, people will have to know the program exists, get to the program, whatever that first step is. Because remember, people have to know about the program in order to benefit from it. So think through from that level on, what are those kind of steps in order? And you can add more boxes if you need to, of all of those different things that are going to have to occur to make sure that that activity is successful. And once you've listed out all those steps, think about, are there things that could go wrong? Like we mentioned before, are people aware of the program? And if they're not aware of the program, what could some potential challenges be? Now, you don't have to have the exact why reasons, because this is where we start to develop our learning questions in the next step, but start to probe, what do you think you don't know that you would need to kind of understand to see if this step was working or not? And in some cases, you might have some of this already available. Maybe you definitely know that your program is going to be successful because they've already scheduled time for trainees to attend. So there could be, not every single step will have these unknowns. And so there could be some that you just don't need to probe as deeply. But think through, are there really barriers in the community that we might need to probe more, or could be one of the areas that we explore? And so this just involves a little bit of thinking about the context in which your specific program is occurring and what those barriers and challenges could be in that context for you. And this is just an exercise that you can walk through different activities that you have and kind of probe in these different areas. We'll prioritize it in the next step because we wouldn't have time to cover everything. But this is a really useful exercise to just start to think through, what don't I know? And to get it down on paper so it just becomes more clear and we can start kind of getting more strategic and narrow in the next few steps.